project planning and cost estimation and budgeting. In this very unit, we'll be looking at projects, how to plan a project, how we estimate costs, and the cost budgeting, the cost control method, and what we call the budget contingencies. Okay. Now, quickly, let's go through the various items. Every project demands planning. We say that if you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. In everything you do, if you fail to plan, then indirectly you are planning to fail. So in every activity that you do, when you completed secondary school, because of what you want to become in this life, you told yourself that, let me go to university, do a degree, and after the degree, I'll become Mr. A or Mr. B. Okay? So you have planned your life that I want to do A, B, C, D. So planning at some point, at some level, is basic to human activity. And project planning is also to apply what we call common sense to project management. The main activities over here is what to do and how to do it. Whenever we are planning, we are only trying to increase the likelihood that a project will be able to be implemented efficiently, number one, effectively, number two, and successfully. It covers the first three stages of a project management cycle. That is the conceptualization phase, the planning phase, and the preparation of the proposal. Why do we plan? Whenever we are planning a project involves, one, identifying your priorities. What are the things that you need? So identifying your priorities and your need and your opportunities. Number two, you need to discuss and test the various possible course of actions. What can be the various issues that can help you to be able to solve or those particular needs? Then among the things, you choose the appropriate one that can best solve that particular problem for you. Then you need to agree on your expected, what you expect to achieve. At the end of the day, when you solve that problem, what is your expectation? What do you expect to find? Then you have to calculate the human and the material resource that will be needed. How many workers will you need to do the projects? How much will it cost to buy materials? So the human and the material resources that you need to do the work. Then you also have to anticipate possible problems that may arise through the projects. And you need to find timetable for work in that particular way. How long will it take you to do each of these activities? If we want to identify costs, costs can come from various activities. Number one, costs can come from the hiring of the people or the labor. Costs can be incurred from labor. Costs can also be incurred from material that we are going to procure. The cement, the sand, the iron rods, the wood, everything can also bring costs. Then when we are subcontracting certain activity to people to do on our behalf, that can also be a cost. So subcontractors, payments to subcontractors for services that they have rendered can be a cost, or experts' opinion or services. Then equipment and facilities. If we need to rent bulldozers, we need to rent buildings and other things, those are also costs. Then travel and transportation. If we need to travel or we need to rent cars, we need to rent hotels, we need to procure other things, airfare and all the others, they can also be a source of cost to the projects. Costs can be categorized into various categories. We have what we call direct costs. Those are the costs that are incurred directly by the project. Then the indirect costs, that costs as we are going along the project. There are certain things that you don't anticipate, but they come in, but you need to pay, you need to spend money on them. We call them indirect costs. Then recurring costs, cost of item that you need to be paying every day or every time. That is workers. If you pay a laborer today and the laborer comes tomorrow, you cannot tell the laborer that, oh, I paid you yesterday, so I can't pay you today. If, for instance, if they are doing by day, you are paying them on daily basis, then it means the labor cost will be recurring. If you need materials and you need to go for materials on daily basis, what it means is that every day you will need to be buying materials. So we call it reoccurring cost. Then non-reoccurring is, for instance, whilst on the course of the project, somebody gets injured, okay? Somebody gets injured and you take the person to the hospital and the person is treated. The amount of money that you spend on that person, usually you don't anticipate that somebody will get injured every day and that you need to be spending money, hospital money on daily basis. So we say non-recurring costs. Then fixed costs, there are costs that are fixed. It won't change as far as the projects are in execution phase. Then variable costs that keeps changing every time. We have the normal cost and we have expedited costs that we are putting in mind. That's the crash cost. When we need to expedite a project and we are pumping in more money, then the sunk cost, money that you have already spent, is called crash costs. You don't have control over it. So costs can be categorized into these: direct, into direct, indirect, non-recurring. So this is how the matrix has been drawn. Okay, some direct labor can be a direct cost. It can be a non-recurring cost. It can be a fixed cost, and it can also be a normal cost. Building lease can be an indirect cost. It can be a non-recurring cost, and so on and so forth. Now, how do we estimate costs? Cost estimating process. This is the process of determining by estimation the cost of a project. By estimation, the cost of a project. We usually do that by taking into consideration the trade-off between time and cost, which we already did when we're trying to crash a project. So it's a trade-off between time and cost, and evaluating the overall impact of costs on a project. One output of cost estimating process is cost management plan. The cost management plan is often used to establish, because you as the project manager, you yourself have a management plan in terms of how cost will be disbursed within the project life cycle. So the output of the cost estimating process is the cost management plan. And the cost management plan, there are certain rules of it. Within the cost management plan, one, you should have the rounding rules. How many decimal places are allowed? If I write something like 100.56276, and I say, oh, my decimal places is always 2 decimal places, so I put it here, making it 100.56. If this is multiplied by 1,000, what it means is that you'll be throwing away, so this will be 1, 2, 3. You'll be throwing away 276 cedis. You might think that point to this figures here will be nothing, but over a period of time, it is money that you are throwing away. If you are to multiply it by 10,000, you are talking about 2,776. If you are multiplying by 1,000,000, you are talking about 27,000. So there should be a standard metrics for measuring a rounding rule. Okay. Then 2, standard units of measurement. Are we measuring in kilograms? Are we measuring in hex? Are we measuring in meters? Are we measuring in kilometers, or what? There should be a commonly used parametrics data, such as resource rates. So for instance, if we are hiring 10 laborers, and each laborer is taking 50 cedis per day. The parametrics will be that 10 laborers multiplied by 50 will be 500 per day. Overhead rate, inflation rate, interest rate, etc. Then there should be an end value credit criteria, which will be our last thing that we'll be looking for today. I'm just taking you through the costs. Types, tools for or techniques for cost estimating. There are, 7 main ways of doing it. Number one is generally the primary purpose of estimating cost is to arrive at the cost estimate for each. If you want to find a cost, all these things are all projections, okay? They are not 100% accurate. I want to build a 6-unit classroom block, okay? And I want to find out how much will it cost me to do it. How will I be able to do that? I'll be able to do that by using one of these methods. We have what we call the analogous, or what we call the top-down estimating. Then we have the parametrics, the quantitative based or the comparative estimating. Then what we call the bottom-up or the definitive estimating. Then we have the activity-based costing, that is the ABC. Then we have the ballpark, then we have the feasibility, then we have the 3-point estimating technique. This 3-point estimating technique still uses what we did. So it will be cost estimating, which will be equal to our optimistic costs plus 4 most likely costs plus our pessimistic costs all over 6. Just like we used to determine time, okay? If we don't know how to cost a particular project, we could use this formula. Cost estimation is equal to optimistic costs plus 4 most likely costs plus our pessimistic costs all over 6. And that will help us to be able to determine the cost of a particular project. But we are not going to be doing that for today, okay? So I won't bother you. Now let's go through them one by one. Analogous. When we talk about analogous estimation, what does it mean? This is usually based on the estimates on the estimate of a similar project that is already completed. We call it the top-down estimate. Now, this is how it looks like. Assuming we want to build a 6-unit classroom block, okay? This is a 6-unit classroom. It uses something like the WBS. I hope you remember. And we have the major deliverables. For the sake of my example, I'm just going to limit it to just few. So for instance, we want to build a 6-unit classroom block. Then the top-down approach says that we make reference to an existing document. That is why we also call the top-down approach as incremental budgeting. What it means is that we go and find a similar project. Somebody did a similar project and it costed the person, let's say, 5,000 cedis. Okay, somebody did the project and spent 5,000 cedis. And we go and take his WBS or his work breakdown structure, and we want to use his cost estimate to help us do the costing of ours. So we say that we can say something like, okay, the person spent 5,000 cedis to do it in 2020, but we are doing it in 2022. So maybe because of inflation and others, ours will cost 6,000. So this is our foundation stage. This is our superstructure. This is our finishing. This is our finishing. So how much are we supposed to spend at the foundation level? Maybe foundation level, we are going to spend 3,000. At this level, maybe we are spending 2,000. And finishing, we are spending 1,000 cedis over there. Foundation comes with other activities. So let's say the clearing of the land, we spend 2,000 for clearing of, 1,500. Assuming, let's say, we spend 1,500. We spend 1,500 for clearing. Then this is the laying of the blocks. Let's say we spend 1,500 on the blocks, laying of the blocks. At the superstructure, when we are laying the blocks for the structure of the building, let's say we spend 900. And let's say the iron rods and the pillars, we spend 1,100. The finishing, let's say the plumbing work, we spend 600, and the plastering or the painting we spent, let's say, 400. So realize that we are trying to assign cost to all the various activities, but we are assigning it from the top to the down. So this 6,000 is broken down into or a shared among the various major deliverables or the major activities. So this is 3,000, this is 2,000, this is 1,000, making it 6,000. And each of these activities will help us to calculate for this. So you realize that this is 1,500, this is 1,500, making it 3,000. This is 900, this is 1,001, making it 2,000. This is 600, this is 400, making it 1,000. So this is how the top-down approach of estimating cost for projects is done. Any question? Please, any question? Okay, so that is how we do the top-down approach. Now we go to the next one we call the parametric approach. This method uses project characteristics to model or estimate costs. It uses historical information that has been codified. For instance, we have a house, okay? We have a house, and that we are supposed to do tile. We want to tile the entire floor, okay? We want to put tiles on the entire floor, the parametrics. So, for instance, the one supposed to do the job says that I will charge 30 cedis per square meter. Per square meter. So this is 1 square meter, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. If the person says he will charge 30 cedis per square meter, now we have how many square meters? 9. So we just do 30 multiplied by 9 to get the answer. Please, I hope you are following. So the parametrics, helps us to be able to use historical data. So in a home, construction, cost is measured per square foot. This remains the same whether the housing is big or small. So you just have to know per foot how much it costs. I am doing a project and we are supposed to do the roofing, and the people that came there to do the estimate for the roofing, they said we are going to charge you 22 cedis per meter for the roofing. So if I want to know how much it will cost me to roof the entire building, then what it means is that if assuming I have 400 meters and each meter is 22 cedis, so it's just going to be 22 multiplied by 400, and that will be 8,800. Okay, that will be 8,800. So that is how we do the parametric estimating. Then we have what we call the bottom-up estimating. The bottom-up estimating is not different from the top-down, but in the bottom-up, the only difference is that I'm trying to delete the figures in the table so that I can use it to do this one. Okay, so for instance, when we are doing a bottom up, what it means is that instead of costs done from the top, you know, the top down approaches compares the project to an existing project, but the bottom up approach is a zero-based estimating. We also call it zero-based estimating. What it means is that we don't know how much the entire project is going to cost us. We are building the cost right from the zero base, from no idea of how much the project is going to cost us. So we are going to, for instance, we say, okay, clearing the land, okay, we are going to spend, let's say, 2,000 to clear the land. The block laying, we are going to spend, let's say, 3,500 to do the block laying, the filling, and all those things. The superstructure, let's say we say, okay, this one will cost us, let's say, 5,000. The laying of the pillars will cost us, let's say, 4,500. The plumbing work will cost us 1,800, and the painting will cost us 2,000. Assuming these are the only activities, I'm just limiting it to just few activities for the sake of our class for this very example. So this is 2,000 plus 3,500. So foundation, the whole of foundation was going to cost us 5,500. This is 5,000 plus 4,000. So this is going to be 9,000. This is 2,000 plus 1,800, which is going to be 3,800. So when we are done, we'll add all of them together. Okay, we'll add all of them together. So that is going to be 5,500 plus 9,000 plus 3,800, which will give us 18,300. Okay. Now, if you compare the bottom-up approach with that of the top-down approach, this approach most of the time proved to be the best as compared to the other, because this one helps you to assign costs from the bottom or from the minimum activity or the least activity to the highest, and it helps you to be able to capture everything very well. So it makes this approach the best in terms if you compare it to that of the top-down approach. Then we have the next one we call the activity-based costing. We can also refer to it as line item budgeting. Now, the difference between the activity based costing is that the activity-based costing is more detailed. For instance, if we say we are clearing the land, the clearing land activity, even with that, we can have other sub activities or sub costs because to clear the land, one, you might need to hire a bulldozer. The bulldozer itself cannot drive from the main station to the site. Probably you might need a payloader or a trailer to carry the bulldozer. You might also need, let's say, how do you call this? The cost of the driver that will be driving both the payloader and the bulldozer, the fuel. So just the clearing of the land alone comes with other costs. So the activity-based estimate says that don't just tell me the various activity, but break it down to its minimal or the least cost for me to know what, if you say clearing of land, what goes into clearing of land. So the activity-based costing consists of 4 steps. Assign cost to activity that use the resources. Then identify the cost drivers. So if you are saying you are clearing the land, what are the cost drivers for clearing of the land? The hiring of the bulldozer, the buying of fuel into the bulldozer itself, the conveyor or the payloader that will convey, the driver that will drive the payloader. Every single cost you need to tell me. So this 2,000 needs to be broken down into a further level to show what comes together to form this 2,000 here. So that is what we call the activity based. Compute a cost rate per the driver unit or the transaction. Multiply the cost driver rate times the volume of the driver's unit used by the project. So as you break the item down into its list, or you decompose it into its list form, you begin to add them together for it to get the total up here. The next one we call is ballpark approach. The ballpark approach is like, you don't know how much it's going to cost you. So right now, if I ask the class, now let me ask this question to the class. How much will it cost me to prepare fufu and palm nut soup? Please go to the chat section and give me. How much will it cost me? Fufu and palm nut soup. Somebody said 50 cedis. Somebody said 200 cedis. Somebody said 150 cedis. Somebody said 500. Hey, will be cross 1,000. No. All right. So look at what I just did. I just used an approach we call the ballpark approach. That is trying to find the cost. It will surprise you, or I will not be surprised if nobody writes 1 Ghana cedi. But 1 Ghana cedi is also money. But why is nobody writing 1 Ghana cedi? Because ideally, no wise person will tell you that you are going to use 1 cedi to prepare fufu and palm nut soup. But you realize that when I said how much will it cost me to prepare fufu and palm nut soup, including the boys who have never even cooked water before, they have not even boiled water on fire before. If they want to boil water, they use kettle. They are even telling me something. Some are saying 100, some are saying 500. You know, the ladies are the ones saying the 1,000 and the 500. Because when I say palm nut soup, I didn't even state the type of palm nut soup I'm talking about. Whether the one with the mushrooms, with the crab, with the willy and all those things. I didn't state. I just said fufu and palm nut soup. But everybody is giving me a cost. So with a ballpark approach, it involves requesting quotes from employees or from people who may or may not have anything to do with the project. So I just asked a question to the class, and some people who have never or may not have anything to do with project work are giving me an idea of how much, what do you call it, preparing fufu and palm nut soup will cost me. Please, just a second. Okay, so the ballpark approach is like throwing a question to people, and that people will bring up their idea. And we typically use ballpark approach when you don't have information about what you want to do, or time is not on your side. You need to cost a project, but the time for you to submit the budget is very, very near. So you just go around there and ask people, Charlie, if so we see a 2-bedroom house, how many months or how many years or how many days can you use to build it? Oh, somebody say 5 days, somebody says 10 days, somebody says 15 days. So okay. I average, let me just take 10 days and go. And it is less accurate because it provides a basis for which a project or an activity within the project is costed. So it gives you a fair idea, but it is less accurate. This approach has a higher level of margin of error, okay? And it's not good substitute for a formal method of costing a project. It's not good to use it as a formal way of costing a project. Then feasibility. This is an approach that is mostly used for after the initial scope development. It is most accurate if carried out after the completion of the preliminary project design. This estimation method is routinely used for construction projects where there are published materials. So we have a list that telling us that, oh, cement is 70 cedis. This is that, this is that. It makes us to be able to go, we have gone out there to look for the actual cost, and it makes us to be able to write exactly how much cost is going to be. This table can often give reasonable, accurate cost estimate for a wide range of project activities. They are more accurate than the ballpark. If you compare the feasibility estimate to the ballpark, they are more accurate. Then definitive. These can only be given upon the completion of a project. Definitive estimates are done when the project has reached about 90 to 95%. By that time, you know how much money you have spent so far. So it makes it very easy for you to be able to tell how much you have spent so far or how much you'll be spending for the entire project. So this is because mostly at this point, all the major purchases order have been submitted based on the known prices and availability. So when we are doing definitive estimates, we mostly do it after the project has completed or is completed around 90 to 95%. By then, major items have already been procured. So we could be able to assign costs to the entire project. Bearing all unforeseen contingencies, definitive estimates should reflect the true cost of your project. Now, the margin of error of these various methods. The ballpark approach has a plus or minus 30. What it means is that if you are supposed to spend 1,000 cedis, if they tell you 1,000, it is plus or minus 30%. 30% of 1,000 is 300. Okay, so it is either you are spending 700 cedis. Either you are spending 700 cedis or you are spending 1,300. It's a margin of error of 30%. So 30% of if 30% of 1,000 is 700, It's 300, sorry. And you subtract the 300 from the 1,000 to get the minimum amount you'll be spending. And the maximum amount you'll be spending is 1,300. Feasibility is plus or minus 10. And definitive is plus or minus 5%. Ooh. What is the problem with the cost estimation? Initially, some people will cost it at a very low price. And usually, while the project is in its developmental or in its execution phase, there are a lot of unexpected difficulties that may arise that will make cost increase. Then lack of definition. If the person doesn't tell you what exactly the person wants you to do for them, you realize that cost will keep changing. Then external factors. For instance, if the government of Ghana gets up one day and says that, oh, I won't allow a particular project to continue. Please halt all projects. Let's do a review before we continue. As soon as the government of Ghana lays hold of a project, it will delay the project. And don't forget the triple constraint: the cost, the time, and the scope. As soon as time increases, cost and scope will also increase at the same time. Cost budgeting process. Once cost estimates for each activity are available, the cost budgeting process involves just aggregating the values to create the cost baseline. So the cost baseline is then used to measure the project performance. As part of the process, a contingency reserved on individual activities or a group of related activity is also created. Contingencies are the monies that usually we set aside to take care of unforeseen situations. For instance, we have what we call the cost contingency, and we have what we call the managerial contingencies. The cost contingency is that I am constructing a project in an area where it is not likely for the area to flood. Then mistakenly, there is a flood at that particular area. What do I do? What it means is that the project will stall, the project will delay. But because we have established or we are able to set some amount of money down to take care of some of these unforeseen situations, then we can rely on that particular contingency money to fix that particular problem. But if we realize that we want to do managerial contingency, that is, we are saying that as soon as the project runs into challenge, management of the owner of the project and the one executing the project must come into an agreement what is accepted for all of us, okay? And that how much money can we put into the project again to bring the project back to its developmental phase. All right. Budget contingency, that is the allocation of extra funds to cover uncertainties, okay? There are certain uncertainties. There are what we call known uncertainties. There are known items. For instance, I know that the project is likely to, workers will come. I know, so I plan for it. Then we have what we call known unknown. I know that we are in rainy season. Currently, we are in rainy season. But what I don't know is that, so we say known unknown. What we are saying is that I know that it might rain, but when it will rain, I don't know. So we say known unknown. So we call it known unknown. Then we have what we call unknown unknown. That is the act of God. Whoever thought there will be COVID in this world? Nobody thought. But all of a sudden, COVID came and brought a whole lot of shut down everything. So when we don't know the future, it is only God that knows the future. So those are the things that were never part of the scope and should be addressed through a well-defined control process. So we have planned a project to finish it in 4 years, and COVID just came and stalled the entire project. While the project stalls, you realize that prices of items will increase, and by the time we want to resume back to the project site, we will need to spend more money. Okay, we will need to spend more money to be able to complete the project. Inflation added, so we say that is unknown, and because of that, companies set a range of 10% to 30%, 10% for low risk projects and 30% for high risk projects to offset some of these contingencies. So for instance, if you are charging somebody 1,000 cedis for a project, you can decide to do it 1,300, so that in case something happens, you don't need to rush back to the person for extra funds. You rely on the the contingency budgets to be able to take care of those emergencies. Contingencies are needed because projects may change. As you are doing the project, certain ideas and certain new styles may come in, or certain suggestions may come. And anytime you are changing the project, most of the time it comes with cost. Okay, it comes with cost. And because of that, we should set in some money so that as soon as cost incurs, we'll be able to use it to pay. Number two, Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law says that whatever will happen will happen. In our local language, we say, in life, what must happen will happen. There's nothing you can do about it. If the project needs to be affected by certain defects, no matter what you do, it will happen. So because of that, always plan ahead, set some money aside so that if the unanticipated happens, you know how to tackle it. Then we have cost estimation must be anticipated interactive cost. The normal conditions are rarely encountered. What it means is that in life, you will never have what we call normal conditions. For instance, you take 5 cedis in your pocket that you are going to buy gobe. If nothing happens, it becomes part of your profit. It is the game. Robert, he says, if nothing happens, who takes the money? That is why we are saying it's a contingency cost, part of the budget. If something happens, sometimes something will happen and you will be spending more than what you set for the contingencies. So if nothing happens, it becomes part of your profits as the project manager. Now, the issue is, for instance, you take 5 cedis that you are going to buy gobe. Now you get to the gobe area and you tell the gobe seller, please, can you give me gobe 3 cedis? Plantain 2 cedis. As soon as he fetch the gobe 3 cedis, you know your capacity, you know how you can consume gobe. You look at it and say, hey, mommy, what's here? Or say, I'm a way. Are you done? He said, yes. So, oh, mommy, wait, it won't get anywhere. You please make it 4 cedis for me and just put plantain 1 cedi on top. So the plantain, these days, they cut it 50 pesos. So gobe alone is 4 cedis and the plantain is just 1 cedi. So it means 2. One is at the playing at the center line, one is playing at the striking position. As soon as somebody stands in front of your food, the person is able to count the number of plantain on your food. But what I'm just trying to explain is that most of the time, when you take money and put in your pocket that you're going to do something, you go out there and realize that the cost that you plan is never what happens in reality. So normal conditions rarely happens in real life. We have what we call the S-curve. Okay, it's a graphical representation. Okay, let me see if I can show you an example of an S-curve online. I wanted to draw, but it won't help. So let me. Maybe I'll answer the question yourself. Maybe I'll answer that question yourself. All right, so this is how the S curve looked like, okay? In project management, this is how it looks like. Project begins at the initiation stage, goes to the implementation stage, the maturity stage, and the completion stage. So these are graphical representation of the accumulated budget cost over time. Typically, cost rises. So it's like something like this. And cost goes that way. It's a cumulative curve, okay? Typically, cost rises gradually early in the project and accelerates during the execution, and the taper off at the project closes, creating a curve that resembles an S. The work of data for the S curve include the WBS and the project schedule. Okay. Quickly. How do we control costs? Okay. How do we control costs? So cost control process of the triple constraints: time, costs, and scope. Cost is the most difficult item to control. Okay. As you go ahead with the projects, there may be changes, there may be adjustments, there may be contingency plan. It can help you to maintain time and scope objectively. Costs are rarely always negatively affected. So we have to overcome this issue by, number one, any changes to the cost are agreed upon by all stakeholders. If anybody comes and says, oh, let's change this, let's do this, we need to have a round table discussion, and that everybody, all the stakeholders must come to agreements that we all agree that we want to change it before we change it. Other than that, the changes will bring cost, and somebody will say we are not ready to bear that particular cost. Number two, changes to costs are identified quickly. If we want to control costs, we need to quickly identify whenever there are changes. Then any changes are managed as they occur. As soon as the changes occur, we need to be able to manage it exactly at the time that they occur. The most commonly used technique is what we call the end value technique. We call it the end value technique. So activity crashing with time and or cost trade-offs are also used. Now, end value analysis. The end value analysis uses common metrics, okay, to assess the magnitude to variation in cost quickly. It helps you to accurately reflect the variation associated with the schedule and the cost separately. So for instance, if we say that we are doing a project for 10 days, and by the 5th day, we have done 40% of the job. Have we been able to, what value have we so far achieved as a result of, in terms of monetary and in terms of time? That is all that we talk about as the end value analysis. So EVA makes use of both independent and dependent metrics or variable to arrive at cost variation in the course of a project. The independent variables are what we call the planned value, the actual cost, and the end value. The planned value is the sum of the approved costs estimate for an activity scheduled to be performed during a time period. So for instance, if we are supposed to do a project for 10 days, we are supposed to do a project for 10 days, okay? For the 10 days, we might have an approved or planned amount of money that we want to spend. Let's say we want to spend 2,000 cedis for 10 days. So that is going to be our planned value, okay? The value, the sum of the approved costs for an activity scheduled to perform during a given period of time. So if this project is supposed to last for 10 days and that the entire 10 days will cost us 2,000, then by the 5th day, we should have spent as much as 1,000 cedis. If by the 5th day, if we have not spent up to the 1,000 cedis, it has a meaning, okay? And if by the 5th day, we have spent more than the 2,000, then it also brings out a meaning, and we'll be looking at both of them very soon. I'm almost done. So these are so then we have what we call the actual cost. Is the amount of money that we have actually spent. What we have planned to spend and what we have actually spent are two different ones. That's what we call the actual cost. Then the end value is the sum of the approved cost estimates for the activity completed during a given time. So if we say we are going to do it in 10 days, and by 10 days we have done by the 5th day we have done this, what is the value of it? Let's look at a simple example to clarify things. End values are most of the time given in percentages, okay? It is mostly given in percentages. So for example, do an EVA for a project with the following characteristics. The BAC, that is the budget at completion. BAC means budget at completion. So budget at completion. So for this very example, we are supposed to know, we are supposed to calculate certain things, but we have been given the budget at completion, the entire budget of the project, how much it will cost us to embark on the entire project. Then our planned value, how much we have planned to spend at every point in time, and the actual cost, then our end value. So let's look at a typical example. Our dependent variables are, these are the cost and the schedule variance, the cost and the schedule indices, and the budget and the estimate at completion. So we said we want to spend the cost variance. What is the difference between our value, our end value, and our actual cost that we spent? So for the example that we just showed you, okay, to calculate the cost variance, it is cost variance is equal to EV minus AC. Okay, so if you go to our example here, our EV, 45% of our entire budget is 4,500. Okay, so EV is 4,500 minus AC. Okay, AC actual cost, which is 5,200. 5,200. So this will give us 1,000 negative negative 1,200. What does this 1,200 means? There are rules for interpretation. Okay. The interpretation is that if CV is negative, that is cost variance. If when we do the calculation, realize that cost variance is negative, it means that there are cost overruns. Now, what this example means is that we have done 45% of the projects, and out of the 45% of the project that we have done, we have spent 5,200 out of the 10,000. It means there is an extra 1,200. There's an extra 1,200 somewhere that we have spent. Okay, instead of we spending 4,500 at this level, we have spent 5,200. So an extra 2,200 has been spent more than what we are doing. And what it means is that when CV is negative, it means there is a cost overrun. It means cost of activities yet to be performed. Their money has some of their money have already been spent already. So cost of activities performed to date are overrunning the funds for the activities. So by the 45% of the project, we should have at least, if we are spending 10,000 for the entire project, then we should at least be spending 4,500. But our actual costs from the example I showed you, our actual costs that we have spent is 5,200. It means we have overrun the entire budget, meaning certain activities that are yet to be performed, their monies have already been, some of their monies have already been spent earlier, and this will raise concern for management. Then the next one, to calculate the schedule variance. Schedule variance also talks about how much are we on time or we are behind time. So schedule variance, so let me finish the interpretation. If CV is positive, then it means the amount of money we are supposed to spend, we have not even spent it. So for instance, we are supposed to spend 4,500. If by calculating and realize that the figure we got was positive, then it means we have not even spent, though we are done with those activities, but the amount of money we are supposed to spend, like the 4,500 we couldn't even finish spending that amount of money. So if CV is positive, then it means there is a cost overrun. That is, we have spent less on the activities that we have already performed up to date. Then if CV is 0, it means we have spent exactly how much we are supposed to spend, which usually or unlikely occurs. It doesn't occur. Okay. Now, we want to calculate SV. We are saying our SV is equal to our end value minus our planned value. And from our example, we know our planned value to be 4,500. Our EV is 4,500 minus our EV is 4,500 and our planned value is 4,800. 4,580. So this will give us negative 80. What does negative 80 also means in calculating this? What it also means is that if SV is negative, it means that the activities or the project is behind schedule. What it means is that the time we are supposed to do it, if we are supposed to do the project for 10 days, then it means by the 45% of the project, we have not gotten anywhere. The value is negative. Okay? The value is negative. So what it means is that we have not done anything. Tendana says, you're going too fast. Oh, but this one, I've taken my time. The interpretations are in the slides. So when you get the slides, you should be able to use it to interpret it. So the SV is, if the SV is negative, it means that the activity or the project is behind schedule. It means that we have wasted enough time. But if SV is positive, then it means we have worked earlier. We have worked earlier than the time we are supposed to work. So if SV is positive, it means that the activity or the project is ahead of schedule. Then if SV is equal to 0, then it means we are right within the time frame. Now, the last part, the cost variance and the schedule performance index. The cost performance index is that we wanted to know how much money we have spent. So we calculated CV, and CV told us that we had a negative of 1,200. Assuming if this is in cedis, it means we are spending more money than that. But what is the value per each of the CD of this particular amount of money? 1,200. if we spend each one CD, if we spend one CD, how much value are we getting out of the one CD? That is the cost performance index. So to calculate cost performance index, we'll be looking at the interpretation very soon. So just take your time. CPI, we say CPI is equal to our end value divided by our actual cost. So we know our end value to be 4,500. Okay, we know our end value to 4,500 divided by actual costs. End value is 4,500. Actual costs is 5,200. Okay, so actual costs 4,500, then 5,200. Please do the math for me. What do you get? 0.87. What it means is that every one CD that we spend on the project, the value we get is 87 pesos. Please, I hope you are with me. The value we get is 87 pesos. So 87 pesos. So this 1,200 that we were talking about, if you multiply it by the 0.87, 1,200 multiplied by 0.87 will give us 1,044. What it means is that this is the value we are getting. The remaining 156 CDs are going waste. The true value of the money that we are spending on the project. So it means 0.87. So the interpretation is there. Okay. If CPI is less than or equal to 1, all those things, they are there. So when you get the slides, I'm just supposed to show you how to do the calculation. And it's very easy to understand them. Let's do the, what do you call it? The last one, which we call the schedule performance index, the XPI. And we are saying that XPI is also equal to our end value divided by our planned value. So our end value, we said, is 4,500 all over our planned value. Our planned value for this project was what? Planned value was 4,580. So 4,580. So 4,500 divided by 4,580 will give us what? 0.98. And the interpretation is also there. Okay. If our SPI is less than 1, it confirms that the activity or the project is behind schedule, and the value of the work lost that is causing the activity or the project to run behind schedule is 1 minus SPI. So SPI is 0.98. Then the value of the schedule work not performed is equal to 0.02. So this is the value per unit of time, how much time we are wasting on the project, or the value of the time. Now, lastly, let me quickly take you through my last slide for the day. The interpretation is there. When you get the slides, you can just follow through and you understand it. The last thing, our end value analysis, EVT, helps us to determine whether what has been promised has been fulfilled. What we promise to do at every point in time, have we been able to complete them? Number 2, the amount and the percentage of work. If we are at 20% of work, have we been able to spend 20% of the budget that will correspond, or that will correspond with the amount of money that we have spent? Then the amount and the percentage of the budget spent. Okay. it also needs how much have we spent and how much of that money is a percent, what percentage of the amount is of that of the budget. I didn't talk about this thing, but I know you should know them. I didn't talk about the budget at completion. That is the estimate of the total cost of the project when the project is completed. Okay. Then the amount or the percentage of time that you have spent so far. So the end value analysis will help us to do that. What is the use of it? It tells us to work within a very tight budget. Okay. It tells us to be able to work within a very tight budget. Then a project becomes increasingly complex. And because of that, we will need to use the EVT, the end value calculation system, the EVA, the end value analysis system to determine how the project will be costed. Then the progress of tasks can also be measured differently. There is a uniform unit of measure, such as CDs or man hours, that we use to measure them. Then there is a need to get an early warning signal. Okay, as you calculate and you realize that you are behind time or you are behind cost, or you have overrun costs, it tells you to get an early warning signal, or it prompts you to check your spending habits. If you don't take care, you might not be able to spend, or you might not be able to complete the project and you run out of money. Any questions so far? So this brings us to costs when it comes to project management. Any questions so far? Please, any question? Okay, so okay, I don't like doing this, but let me do it. But please, if you have to do it, know when to call. This is my number. If you need to send message or you need to call, please, if you want to call me, send a message and check if I am free. Okay, before you call. If you need to call on anything, please, you can get in touch with me, but first, please be mindful of when to call. Don't call me at dawn, and don't call me very early in the morning. Call me, I don't sleep early, neither do I wake up early. So be very careful the time. So that is my number, 0244705757. If you want to get in touch with me, that is my number. And please, as I said, know when to call and know when to send message. Is that okay? And if you have any question apart from what we have done in class, you are free to get in touch with me. And if I can help you, I will help you. My email address is also Caleb Ejei, ADJEI, Caleb Ejei @gmail.com. Okay, Caleb Ejei @gmail.com. All right. So these are the information. If there is any other thing, I'll communicate with your course rep and we'll see how best any other thing can be communicated. So thank you for your time. And I wish you all the best in your end of semester exams.